Do you know what Watergwan is? It's where you can get news about the Jamaican culture and just learn about how Jamaicans are doing as a yard and abroad.
Salut tout le monde, ici Carrière La Flamme. T'aimes le reggae en français, en anglais, qui vient du Canada, du Québec et de la Jamaïque? Écoute Watergwan.
So rope in and come check out the thing now. It's Watergwan.
I live in the UK and I enjoy tuning in to Watergwan.
I am a big fan of Watergwan. I'm always looking forward for the great vibes, the great things. They discuss a lot of things that are going on in Calgary, across Canada, and of course Jamaica. So
this is what is going on in Jamaica. But check out Watergwan.
Every Friday at 7 p.m. Calgary time.
You get to learn a new Jamaican patois word or even a Jamaican phrase.
I look forward to the patois word of the day, feeding my nostalgic mood with flavor and spice. Only Jamaicans can do.
Watch Watergwan.
It happens every Friday, 7 p.m. So check them out. And bye from Toronto.
Watch Watergwan.
Yo, this is King Sean.
Watch Watergwan.
Relevant and entertaining, so keep up the good work.
Watch Watergwan.
tune in, share, listen to Watergwan.
Big up yourself. Watergwan 2022. Bless her.
Watergwan. Yes, Watergwan.
Watch Watergwan.
Always you're going to know Watergwan in a yard. Check it out. 7 p.m. every Friday.
Happy Friday, everyone. Happy Friday. My name is Shelly Morgan. Thank you so much to MJ, our producer. And it is my pleasure to be your host for yet another episode of Watergwan soundtrack. MJ. Now, here in Canada, we're preparing for Thanksgiving Day, which is celebrated on Monday, 10th October. Thanksgiving or Thanksgiving Day is an annual Canadian holiday of harvest festival held on the second Monday in October, where we celebrate all the blessings and the abundance and the harvest of the past year. It's really a celebration of thanksgiving, gratitude, bountiful, and we spend time with family and friends and feast. And we also have some religious practices, and we'll talk more about religion and religious practices, spirituality a little bit later. Because today's discussion will be focusing on spirituality and the role it plays in our society. And we have two wonderful guests, Dr. Melissa Royal and Janelle Brown. And I know this is going to be very interesting reasoning, especially now since we have experienced a major cultural shift due to the lingering effects of the ongoing pandemic. So please stay with us and stay tuned. It's going to be out of this world. But before, my favorite part of the evening, our patois word of the day, dopey. Dopey. Use it in a sentence. Tell me what dopey is. We invite you to write the definition in the comments. We welcome all your questions and comments in the chat. Keep them coming. We want to hear from you. Dopey. What that mean? Yeah? Use it in a sentence. Have you seen a dopey? Tell us a little story. Not true? Now, last week, we had an in-depth conversation about older adults, dealing with the aging process with our esteemed guests, Paula Deronde and Eunice Graham. We spoke about the cultural aspects of getting older and the shared cost associated with aging, the advantages of being an older adult, and the important roles older adults contribute to our society with their experience, encouragement, and wisdom. Now, to quote Paula Deronde, encouraging the youth, she says, once you know in your heart that you have done your best, angels can't do no better. Now, truly a mic drop moment. We thank both Paula and Eunice for coming on the show to share their encouragement and their valuable experience. And remember, Paula Derande has a book out. My Bird Has Alzheimer's. Caregiving is Living for Two. It is now available on Amazon, in bookstores. Check it out. I know I'm going to get my copy and I'm going to ask Paula to definitely autograph it. Get yours too. Not true? Excellent. Now, we want to hear from you. Send us your feedback on the previous shows. If you missed last week's episode or any other episode, check out the replay on What a Gwaan YouTube channel or our Facebook page. Find the links on our website, whatagwan.ca. Now join us in listening and hearing what's happening across Canada and nearest you. In Winnipeg, the Afro-Caribbean Association of Manitoba is hosting a fall dinner and dance on Saturday, October 15th, located at 239 Watt Street, starting at 6:30 p.m., with a cocktail hour followed by a seated dinner at 7 p.m. The Honorable Aubrey Gordon, the Manitoba Minister of Health, will be the guest speaker for the evening, and live entertainment would be by one and only Clyde Hurler and the Paradise Band. Tickets are $40 for adults and $15 for children under the age of 12. Please note, tickets must be purchased before October 10th, so you have 3 days to reserve your seat. So get your tickets as soon as you can. For more details, contact their website at www.afrocaribbean.org or call them at 204-677-6919 for more information. In Montreal, you are invited to the Jamaica Association of Montreal's Heroes and Heroine Banquet on October 15th, 2022. It will be held at the Ruby Foods restaurant located at 7633 Decarie Boulevard. Starting time 6 p.m. and tickets are $120 for association members and $140 for non-members. The guest speaker will be clinical social worker Mr. Vassal George Ogilvy. For more information, please call 514-737-8229 or email info@jammontreal.com. Now, the Congress of Black Women of Manitoba invites you to join them for their general meeting and breakfast on Saturday, October 15th at Alto's Garden Cafe, located at 1824 Pembina Highway. Tickets are $14.99 plus tax. RSVP before October 12th to secure your space. For more information and to RSVP, please send an email to cobwmb@gmail.com. And now for Spot That Place. Excellent. So this is where we show pictures of places in Jamaica and Canada, and you will tell us a specific location. The clues for this evening is it was launched in 2001. Locations include sharks and stingrays. They have 3 locations in Jamaica. One location includes a jungle trail walk. Again, launched in 2001. Location includes sharks and stingrays. 3 locations in Jamaica. One location includes a jungle trail walk. Where is this place in Jamaica? Can you spot the place? Add it to the comments and we'll tell you if you're right at the end of the show. Come on, give us a guess, people. We want to hear from you. I wear this there. Now, this is going to be a very, very spirited discussion. And I would like to introduce my good friend and is Natadopi Donovan.
Well, let's put it this way. If it was a duppy showing up on the show, I'd be a little bit more scared. just just saying, especially at the night when we're talking about spirituality.
Yes. Yes.
Right? I'm also not sure if the guests would be interested in having that you know what? Maybe it's a question for both of them, right? If they'd be interested in having that type of conversation. Right? But you never know. I mean, there are people who claim to have those conversations. But what I say, yeah, right.
They are a give thanks. It is
Yeah,
a season to give thanks. We
yeah.
have enough things to be grateful for.
Enough gratitude. And we grew up that
No.
way, you know. You have
Yeah.
to, you have to pray before you
Yep.
eat your dinner and all them
Yeah.
things, and part of the culture, not true.
Yes, and not only when you give thanks, you have so much, even if you have little, you give
Yeah.
thanks in giving back and giving to people and blessing other people. So them
There you
can
go.
give
And
thanks
one
too.
of them were the blessings, right? Because we used
Yeah,
to that
man.
part of the culture, not true.
Mm-hmm.
All right, listen, we're gonna have a reasoning because this one's gonna be a hot one. Spirited, you call it. Yeah, I think this one is going to be spirited. So we're gonna do a thing and then we talk back a little more. All right.
Sound good.
All right. Greetings, folks. Welcome again. This is Donovan. You know, get it. All right, that's all right. Another time to reason, and today we're going to talk about spirituality. Mine kind of delayed, up it kind of affect my thing, but so it go right. We're going to talk about spirituality and the role it has played in our lives, especially in Jamaican culture. And today we have two awesome guests who are going to share with us some of their faith. So we have Dr. Melissa Royal, who is a pediatrician based in Jamaica. Out of the she's at the Bustamante Hospital for Children right now. I have to big up the fact that she's a Manchester High grad. You know, we have to big up the school them, right? But you know, one of the things in her bio is that you know she's a Christian mom and loves the Lord, loves her children, and does a number of things based on her faith. And joining her on the panel today to chat with us is Janelle Brown, who is an architect turned marketer, right? But somebody who has a lot of history and family in the spiritual space. Her great grandfather was an evangelist and a founder of many churches in Jamaica, and she lists that her sister and her brother have been very active in the space. But also, one of the things I like was she says in her spare time she studies elements of Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Islam, West African spirituality, right, to help to inform and fortify her understanding of the Christian Bible, which I thought was really cool. So, but we'll go and jump in it because I think, like I said, this one going to be spirited. I'm happy to ask Janelle and Melissa to join us here.
Hi. Hi,
Hey,
Donovan. How are you doing? Shelly's still here.
I am
Hi,
pretty
Shelly.
good. Listen,
Hi, Donovan. Pleasure.
Dr. Raya, listen. So
Hi,
suppose
Melissa.
I was
Hi,
a duck.
Janelle.
All right. To start this off with, we're getting this year. Suppose I was a duck. How would this go?
Well, I would first want to understand how the camera picking you up, and is that a thing now? The duppies can come on the live stream and all of this.
Yeah,
I mean,
duppy can zoom too.
we can zoom. Now we know. Now we know.
Right? Because anything is possible. You know, I've heard many stories, right? As it relates to
Another time and place, but I always believed those things were possible. But I had my first experience about a month ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, here we'll get into it. Don't talk about that yet, because maybe it come out in a question, right? In fact, maybe let's jump into the conversation, because maybe where this should start, and for both of you is let's relate your experience to spirituality and religion, especially growing up. Talk about your experience.
Well, for me, it's very much ingrained in my childhood growing up. Both my parents were ministers in the church. And so our family was, essentially a Christian family. And from a very tender age, we learned, what it meant to have a relationship with the Lord in terms of family prayer, reading of the word together, family devotions, that kind of thing. So it was not for us, not just about going to church, but experiencing that for ourselves.
Mhm.
And I
Right.
think that made a world of a difference for us. So it has been entrenched from a very tender age and has been with us from that time until now, something that will never leave us. So
Right.
it's been a wonderful experience, really, growing up, because you saw it lived and now have the opportunity to live it.
Okay. Janelle, how about you?
Mine was a bit more eclectic. So while my Jamaican family has very strong Christian roots, as I said, my great grandfather Harold Crawford founded several churches. One still is there in St. Mary. Um, and both my grandfathers were organists in the church, and of course, their wives, elders. Separate churches, one in St. Anne, one in Kingston, and so forth. However, we didn't grow up in church in that way.
Right.
First of all, my mother was a senior lecturer at UWI. And when she was doing her PhD, we traveled abroad when I was very young. I think I turned 4 there. And so I was exposed to many different religions as a very young child. We were in a very Orthodox Jewish town. So funny enough, until I was about 5, I thought we were Jewish because everybody around me was just having
Right.
Hanukkah and all of this. So I came home and my parents were like, no, 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 no. There's a whole Jesus. It's not the same thing. Um, and of course, there was a lot of multinational people, multicultural people around. So I was exposed to a lot of different things. When we returned to Jamaica, when I was about 7 or 8, my mother took the tack that we had a church home, but we would visit several different churches because she wanted to enforce to us that God doesn't live in any one place or in any one church. You
Right.
can go anywhere and experience the power of God. And so we got to see many diverse ways that people practice and denominations. And then I was a rebel. I was anti, what is the church telling me? I want to question everything. And what about the dinosaurs? And what about evolution? And I was like 9 and just fresh in the church and just asking questions and causing issues. And it was a winding road. But when I was about 20 or 21, I became born again Christian.
Right. So both of you have appreciated and accepted some core elements of spirituality and then the layers of religion. How, when you look out on society and our Jamaican community, how do you see it? Because just about everybody have some story related to some spiritual element and some church element, don't?
Definitely.
Why is that?
You know, I'm in marketing and I was on a video shoots, and I was on a bus with a guy. You know, when you're in a conversation you're meant to be in, and something just stuck with me. And he said to me, Jamaica is a very spiritually potent place.
Right.
And that has always resonated ever since. No matter what it is you practice, everyone in Jamaica, I believe, believes in a higher power and believes that there is another spiritual realm that we can access, whether you are Christian or otherwise.
Melissa, why do you think it is?
Well, it's well known. Jamaica has the most number of churches per square mile. Every corner you go around, you find a church. And, sometimes 2, 3 on one street. It's pretty amazing. You wonder how church, occurs at the same time on the same day. So that just talks about access, right? So most people have access to a church.
Right.
That's the first thing. So there is some level of familiarity with what that means, and some exposure. So, we have a saying, close to church, far from God. There are some people live beside a church who never stepped inside the church itself. So it really has to do with access, really has to do with exposure. And then coming from the time of colonialism, until now, it has been passed down in terms of heritage, the beliefs that we have, especially Christian, and then there's a mixture with other religions, at this time. So even if it didn't happen at home, then it would happen at school. Most of the church, lots of the schools were founded, by churches and are still run by churches. So that influence is there as well. Then you step on to, so that's formative years, basic schools. Most basic schools in Jamaica are linked to a church, who has founded a church and who keeps oversight over the school itself. And then you get to the primary level, then you get to secondary level, and tertiary level, as Janelle said, is where people broke out because there's usually no church close by, at the university level, unless there are groups of people on the campus who will meet, so at that point in time, folks kind of have to decide, if they're gonna stick to what they've grown up knowing, or discover something else. So it's really multifactorial, but it's all around us. The influence is there.
And I would say it continues even past tertiary level, because by the time you get into the office, the boardroom, wherever it is you're working, everything is a prayer. It still follows the same pattern. So if you were in primary or prep school and you were praying morning, afternoon, and evening, there was 3 times of prayer at least. We still do that. We open every meeting. You could be having a small gathering. It doesn't matter. If there's 2 or 3 Jamaicans there, we're going to start with a prayer.
Right.
That's interesting, because what I wanted to go on was how this whole culture travels with the Jamaicans everywhere. Have you ever been on a flight where the turbulence get bad? The Jamaican flight, right? I mean, depending on which zone you're in, some people on their cell phone texting their loved one, but the Jamaican people, them pray like hell, man. Not true?
Oh, yes.
Especially when the plane land.
No, we clap. Yeah, big prayer and clap.
I've been so surprised, no matter where I've lived, and I've lived a few places. Anything frightening, anything shocking, it is amazing to me how quick the blood of Jesus comes out of my mouth. I don't know where it comes from, but if I've been in France, Germany, the Caribbean, the States, it doesn't matter. If I feel like something negative is happening or something shocking, immediately, blood of Jesus.
Come on, the blood of Jesus.
Yeah, man.
So let me ask both of you. With all of this culturally ingrained focus on spirituality and religion and church and all the rest of it, let's look at the society and some of the social conditions and the social standards and crime, all kinds of things. There's a strange equation that cannot seemingly be properly explained. So I'm going to ask you guys to help me with it. What is happening and why where we're at, despite all of this?
I mentioned it earlier, close to church, but far from God. And I think it really has to do with that. Most people have a sense of familiarity with what it means to be spiritually minded, but not many people actually go deeper to find out what the tenets, of the teachings are, and to actually apply the teachings, to their lives. So we know that, Jesus came to the earth, and he really taught us how to live, how to love, how to be graceful with each other, how to turn the other cheek, right? And to suffer loss instead of retaliating. Those kind of lessons were taught by the Lord, but not many people have actually learned those lessons. And so you find that that's a root cause for crime. Everybody can take no this, as him call it, not take no this. And the ease of retaliation, is just there. And even modeling in homes as to conflict resolution, that sort of thing, is not biblically based. It's just how you feel, what you see. So environment is there in terms of how you see your friends, how you see your parents and your brothers and sisters respond to conflict, and what you see is what you do. So if it is that it's not the actual teachings of the Lord are not exuded from a person, then yes, there may be a lot of spirituality around, but it's not being useful to us because we're not listening to the voice of the Lord that tell us why, yes, in this, but walk the other way. Understand? And I think that is the problem that we're having, especially in our schools. You know, hear about it in terms of the violence that's just spiraling out of control at the school level. So there is really a social breakdown, because multifactorial as well in terms of lack of parenting skills, that sort of thing. So there is no real seeking for truth, seeking for direction, seeking for allowing the Lord himself to lead you in your life. You just, every man do for himself, whatever you want to do, you do for himself. And then that coupled now with what you see and your background really is what is driving, I think, the crime factor. So really have to work at the root causes of the social breakdown that we really see.
So I agree and disagree on certain points of what was said. The social breakdown, absolutely. I mean, there is no question that is happening. I also, however, think that there is some disconnect between, and I want to first disclaimer, this is not talking about all churches. I'm going to make a generalization right now. I believe that over time, there has been a disconnect in what and how the church teaches and its relevance to the people that are in the church. There's not as many young people in church right now as there used to be. And there's not as much push from you used to have a lot more elders in a family who would come to church, go to church, you have to go to church, that kind of a thing. And that's not necessarily the culture that's happening now. So because we have that social difference, the people, there's a more aging population in churches, and the younger people are not feeling like the messages are relevant to their current situation. And that is not necessarily the fault of any one group of people, but the social issues that are being faced right now. Jamaica has not seen a lot of this before. Right. So when you have different groups of people, and let's focus in a bit on the economically challenged group, because that is where the most crime occurs, not because, or well, that's arguable because you also have white collar crime. But
right,
let us speak to the violent crime, because that is what I think everybody is talking more about. Although I would love to see a bit more on all sides. But anyway, when you have a group of marginalized young people who are in the Instagram, TikTok universe, and this one is wearing, this, and this one has butt injections, and this one is, how the baby hair going to, and, changing outfits every day, and it's hypersexualized, and then the next thing you know, it's the guns and the this, and the Don is in the community, and he's controlling this and that, and sending for this person's daughter, and this one has to be, and there's internal in the family prostitution, and the money not enough, and all of these different social issues. And I'm speaking from the perspective of being raised by a clinical social worker here. So I hear a lot of these issues constantly for like the last 38 years. And when you work with these kids, because I used to spend my summers working with not the kids who are being bullied, but the bullies, the children who needed intervention because something was going on in their home that no one could quite figure out. The church is either ill-prepared or has no context or set of tools to preach to what is going on. And so when these young people are having this bizarre, almost dystopian life happening, and they go into church and the message is the same thing I was hearing in 1995, then they seek another master. Because we are hardwired to worship, we're hardwired to follow a leader. And that leader can become Don Man, that leader can become a friend or a internet star or some other glorified, the word pop idol is not there for is there for a reason. Or it can be music, it can be a celebrity, a local celebrity or whatever. You start to frame your thinking around something else.
So, Janelle, does it mean though that the spiritual connection and the spiritual elements are therefore either not connecting or disconnecting? Because some of the things you're talking about have been going on for way more than 38 years, right?
Yes,
Maybe
but it's
similar
been
to
a
Perglet stuff and all those things,
exponential growth of
right?
disconnection. It's been happening over a period of time,
And
and
that's really
now
the
it's
question.
critical mass.
So hence the question then, because one of the things I wanted to bring up in our conversation was other claims to spirituality. So for example, Rasta, the other day I was having a reasoning with somebody and I'm saying, boy, Rasta has been claiming spirituality and been saying a lot of solid things for years. And back in the days, as a youth, you look around and people never listen to Rasta. When Rasta was talking about healthy living, how to treat your brother and love and all the other things, which were not necessarily biblical, but more spiritually focused. There was almost, a dismissal of some of those spiritual tenets. Isn't that real?
Well, the first thing is a lot of those things are biblical. I'm sure Melissa would agree with me to say that
Right.
the love and the health and all of that is in the Bible, first of all.
Right.
And especially if you're Seventh Day, which I am not, but a lot of focus on health and eating in that sector. But in addition to that, I would say Rasta has had an extremely positive impact on me personally. And if you have studied or gotten to know or reasoned with any group of Rastas, I have a lot of good friends who are bona fide, long time, gray-haired Rastafari. There, Jesus is in there. Depending on your way of worship, the Bible is used heavily. Jesus
Right.
is spoken to heavily. The Psalms are used heavily. The Old Testament more than the New, but this is not. It's not a completely separate religion in that way. In addition to the fact that as a Black nation, I would like to credit Marcus Garvey and Rastafari for my awareness of my Blackness and how I have walked through white spaces for
Yeah.
a lot of my life. So Rastafari, I think, has a very good place. It is not Christianity, but it is closely related. And I think that the spirituality of Rasta protected a lot of us society-wise for a long time in terms of how it had gathered young men to be spiritual in a very masculine way, in a way that Western Christianity didn't speak to the masculine energy, and especially in Black men, because we know that in a colonial society, we were taught a bit differently because they wanted to tame certain things.
Right.
So Rastafari was very important and still is very important, even though they are facing a similar problem of not having a lot of conscious young Rastas in the numbers that you used to see.
Melissa, why the disconnect?
I think it really has to do with the overall shift, not just in church per se, but I think the overall shift in the world more towards, even as Janelle mentioned, idolatry, really, and self-gratification, immediate self-gratification. We talk about materialism, the get-rich-quick mentality. All of these things, I believe, are reasons really for the disconnect. The way that the world has shifted and the Western cultures, as opposed to even the entire world actually has become a lot more materialistic and self-driven, as opposed to seeking a higher purpose or seeking direction for your life, that sort of thing. So I think it really has a lot to do with the pressures now that really did not exist 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot that is happening externally. And I think it also has affected the church, also has affected young people growing up. The influence is just not there. So you would have conscious grandparents. No, grandparents are 30s or 40s, as the case may be. So that sort of wisdom is not passed on because it's just not there. So I think a lot of that has to do with why you have such disconnect, because teenage pregnancies, everything that's going on now, there is no guidance of the young people, or little guidance of the young people, especially those who are in inner city areas or who lack that sort of positive role model in their lives. So I think a lot of that really causes a disconnect that we're seeing here, that lack of positivity all around to begin with.
And adding to your point, a lot of that falling to the church because there are so many larger gaps in the wider society, things that should be otherwise structured, systems that should be in place are not there. And so when everyone is kind of trying to look to church to fix economic issues and social issues that have been going for decades, that the root cause is not always spiritual all the time.
That's an interesting point.
The church can't always jump in every single. Sometimes you need a doctor. Sometimes you need a financial advisor. Sometimes you need the law.
Yeah, but all right, hold on. For both of you though, because there was a time, it almost like the politician or the teacher or the policeman in the community who played all these roles, right? There was seemingly that expectation of the spiritual organizations and the church to play certain roles. So let's pull it back a sentence and say, okay, what role should these spiritual organizations play in today's Jamaican society? What role should they play? Melissa, let's start with you.
Well, I think folks really have to be cognizant of the environment that we are living in. Some folks are focused on growing numbers as opposed to creating quality in the church, quality individuals who are have that sense of purpose and that sense of belonging and that sense of community development, as opposed to the me, myself, and I mentality, right? So I think that seeing what's going on in the world, the shift that's occurring, even in thinking, that churches really have to tap into that, and then to use the same guidance that we get from the Bible, because the Lord doesn't change. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. So he has a solution for today's problems that never existed, a century ago or even 2 decades ago. God has all the solutions. So I think it's really to be cognizant of the world that we live in, the change in the culture, the change in the needs of the community, and really to come up with, ways and initiatives to reach the people in the community, because every community is different. Yes. Right. So it's really to tap into what the needs are around you, as opposed to being focused on let's grow the church.
Mm-hmm.
Janelle, what role should the church play, or the spiritual organizations? Because I don't want to just limit it.
Well, yes, I like the broadening of that, but because we're talking about Jamaica, we know that for the most part we're speaking about the Christian church,
right? But
not necessarily all across the board. I believe that the church, Melissa touched on a part of this in terms of getting back to the core of worship and not worrying about just growing your congregation. A lot has gone to the left with the wider body that we call the church. We saw that with the Kevin Smith issue. Was it last year or the year before? Sorry, the COVID time lapse.
Yeah.
But when that happened, I recall my mother saying to me, but how the people them could have been so, gullible and so foolish to just, I said, Mom, have you been to just a random average church lately, where there's a lot of prosperity gospel being preached? There's a lot of miracle healing that's not necessarily there. There's a lot of anything to hold people's attention. And then there is the ongoing issue for centuries of, it's a carryover from slavery, where people didn't necessarily read a Bible but followed what the pastor said. Right. And so you have a lot of people who run into the position of pastor or whatever kind of church leader in order to control a group of people rather than to preach what is supposed to be preached. So my thought is that the gap or the roles that should be played. The first thing is that they should go back to the core of worship in terms of talking about a personal relationship with God, in terms of meeting people where they are with their problems. If you are going to talk about Christianity, you have to talk about Christ. And we know that Christ was a rebel. Christ wasn't sitting down with perfect people. He was going to the people who were giving the most trouble. He was going to the prostitutes and the tax collectors and the thieves and the rough guys and all of this. And so if we are not relating to those people, then I don't know how we're calling ourselves Christian. That makes no sense. So I think we have to get back to preaching the word for the sake of preaching the word. Yeah. As Melissa said, counting numbers and collecting however much collection, if that is what your church is about, that is foolishness. Ministries that have to do with community outreach, I believe, are very important. But I believe that, again, you can't leave everything to the church. It has to be aligned with other agencies and governmental bodies and all of this to make it make sense. Yeah. One church can't take on all of the problems. And so the role to me is morals, ethics, instilling values, giving guidance on institutions like marriage, going and helping the sick in the congregation, understanding who is destitute in your congregation, and trying to help that little corner of your world.
So is there a place for any economic contribution?
I was actually thinking about that today, and it's linked to what we just spoke about, because I think that if it is that we could get our church leaders to align with or understand or have a higher level conceptual discussion with governmental bodies to understand. For example, you have a lot of young people, you have a lot of young men who are out of work. Your church maybe starts some kind of program to do with either training or education, right?
Yeah.
It should then be aligned with something that we know that the government is pushing for, because if the government says we're going to open up X sector, let's say, I don't know, car mechanics or something, then it doesn't make sense that you and your church push for the next 5 years and train chefs, right? So yeah. It is about aligning with but not being responsible for the government's job.
Well, yeah, and I totally agree with that. But in terms of the contribution, and Melissa, I want to bring you in on this a little bit, because here comes technology, and COVID has taught everybody, including the spiritual organizations, right, that you have to embrace it. True?
Right.
How does this embracing of it influences its reach and the role it plays?
Well, it really has to do with training, and it really has to do with exposure, because most churches went online, and most church and other people were forced to figure it out. So the world itself is more technology driven now. So whereas back in the day you may have a congregation who knew nothing about media and technology, you do find one or two, or even a good number of people, depending on how large the church is, who have been exposed to this. And it really is the young set of people who have the knowledge about this kind of thing. So it really has to do, I think, with training and with encouraging young people in the congregation, especially those who are at school and have access to media and technology, and learning about it, expanding it, and pushing that in the church itself, and then using that now to drive folks to become more profitable in terms of seeking not just spirituality per se, or economic advancements, but using that to benefit each other, benefit the congregation and those in the community.
Yeah, are we seeing that vision though? And Janelle, because, church gone online, but is it helping? Are they using that technology and the modernization to influence some of the things you're talking about?
Melissa touched on it. It depends on your church. It's not, okay. You can't, at this point, I can't make any generalizations about technology in churches, because if you're going to go to I'd say maybe 40% to 50% of the churches in Kingston, you're going to see something very tech savvy, right? But Jamaica is not Kingston. So you have to think about everywhere. And that has to do with access, that has to do with cost, that has to do with feeling, like this is, what's the word? Feeling comfortable.
Yeah.
And I discussed this with my mom a few weeks ago because she's been having a strange time. She's 69 years old, adjusting to when you used to shake hand and hug. That part of church. She love that part of church. She want to go and greet and shake hands. She love that. But now, she had to switch over to Zoom and all of this. And that was okay for a while. But the community, and there is something to be said about face-to-face. Now, understanding that the role of church in Jamaica is not specifically or only just to preach. It is a core community center for most people, right? It's where most people socialize. So if you now bring that completely digital, there is something to be lost about Jamaican church culture, but there is also other things to be regained. So again, what Melissa said, it's about teaching the new tools, because a WhatsApp group can be very, very good for a church. Online tools, additional materials in terms of additional sermons, additional information, scriptures, research. These things can be more easily shared, and you can get deeper into your relationship with God if you can access them through technology. Because otherwise you're waiting for the pastor who has his degree or whatever it is in theology or this knowledge or study of the Bible to tell you all about the Greeks and, like I said, the Hindus and the Africans and what this one believe about God and who is what. Technology is a tool, but it all depends on who has access and what they are, what kind of support, as Melissa said, young people and all of that to bring it to life.
Let me ask both of you this one, because we're getting close to wrap up. The future, where is it going? Where do you see spiritual, religious organizations playing their role as our society, as our community, as Jamaica moves forward?
Well, I think there's a healthy future. I see a very bright, healthy future for our churches in the role that it plays, in our society, and not just in Kingston areas or so on. But you see, even the use of technology coming out in rural areas. The church I used to attend when I growing up, we're live streaming as well. So there is that thrust, even in rural areas, to carry on the gospel, not just to the older folks who would prefer to gather, but the younger people as well. So as time changes, the church adapts, albeit it might seem slower, but the church is adapting, to the changing world. So there's an excellent future for the church and the role that it plays. I think we just, at this point, need to keep up with the changing times and the changing needs of the people. So there's definitely, and then with integration as well, not just on a community level, just on a church level rather, but integrating with the other support services that are around, would definitely strengthen the bonds that we have and essentially increase the longevity of the church in the community.
That's a good one. Melissa, not Melissa, Janelle, what do you see of the future of these spiritual organizations and the church?
Well, while my friends and my fellow congregants will tell you that some of my spiritual gifts are visions and prophecy, I can't see the future of the church. I believe that the church's future is entirely contingent upon what its objectives and focus are and how much effort it puts into those objectives and focus. It will be what the church makes of it. So if the church wants to truly get Jamaicans closer to God, and they make the effort to do so, they get their succession planning in place, and they start to understand. I'm a marketer by trade. So if they understand their target market and understand who they're talking to and really start speaking to the mass of Jamaican people, which is now mostly youth, then I say that the church will grow. But until that happens, I would think that it's the other way around. I think people will continue to find other sources and other methods to feel connected to something greater than themselves, and that will include the gangs and the whatever. So it really is about what they put in, and then that is what they will get out.
And the last one is there the likelihood that we ever get back to where there is greater positive impact from all these spiritual sources, Rasta, Christian, you name it? Is there that possibility in your minds?
I think so. Yeah. I think I feel so. I feel so definitely. I feel like that is inevitable because, this is where you go on faith. That's God. God, as we say. God. God is not going to sit down and just let us just go with the wind and forget. We can't forget about God. Let me tell you something. When God shows up and knocks at your door,
effects of all kinds of things, yeah.
It's just going to happen. So it's near or far. It's just a matter of time.
What Melissa started, more church, but closer, too much church and further from God.
Close to church and far from God.
Melissa, you figure if we cut down on the number of churches, things might improve?
I don't think that's the problem. I think it's getting the quality from the church. That's the problem. The quality of the messages, the quality of the impact, the quality of the lives of the people who actually go to the church. I think that is where the focus should be.
As a
fellowship.
That's a whole lot of discussion in terms of focus, right? But listen, here's what I'm going to say, because we're going to wrap it up. There's no question that it has had its impact, positive impact on a lot of us, right? Where we still live with these things that we got out of the foundation. But there is still that unanswered question. I'm always curious about the prayer breakfast, because we've been having prayer breakfast for maybe 38 years, Janelle. I don't know, maybe longer than that. Right? And somehow I am always curious. I asked my dad. My dad's 89 and deep in church and, love God and all that comes with it. But I've always asked him, what's the purpose of the prayer breakfast?
I'm still waiting to hear.
It does seem to achieve nothing.
You want to know why we have prayer breakfast?
I want to know why.
If you ask me, I think it's another social gathering, another thing, another excuse then for us to gather together and do something and have a program and link with each other and that sort of thing. Because it is fellowship, and what happens at prayer breakfast to me is more talking than praying. So, so I think it's another avenue really for fellowship. Yeah, that's what it is for me. That's what I think.
It's fellowship, but it's also ackee and saltfish. You hear? So like, if you have fellowship and you have ackee,
that is as heavenly as it comes. Not true.
Come on, man. Listen, wherever you come to that hour.
All right, listen.
Wherever there is Jamaican food, everybody nice.
That's why
Why not?
All right, listen, time is up. I totally enjoyed this. I appreciate your time, Janelle Brown, Melissa Royal, for sharing your thoughts today with us on A Time to Reason on What a Gwaan. Take care, stay safe, and enough blessings.
You too, blessings.
You too, Donovan. It was great.
Thank you for having me.
Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah, we did say it would have been spirited, didn't we?
Yeah, man, that one did good. Trust me. Spirited indeed. But we like it, lots of good points though. Lots of good points. And it's good to hear, different perspectives on how all of this plays itself out in our society, right? I don't know. I'm still dubious on some of the things, but it's good to watch faith at work. It's good to watch, different people embrace it, even though it doesn't seem to have the multiplier effect. That is usually my big thing. It doesn't seem to have the multiplier effect that you want, and then it begs the question of why. What is it really intended to achieve, right? And like I said earlier, some of the teachings of certain spiritual groups were never accepted and were dismissed when that is some real thing that I think we should have embraced and pushed forward and promoted, right? With a little bit more passion. But awesome discussion. Love it.
And I know, I mean, I have people telling us, who was somebody listening from? Nicole Marie Brown, listening from Trinidad and Tobago. Also, Vance Golding South, listening from Jamaica. And obviously, we have our Canadian people as well. Nicole says, good job. And I think there was a special message here for Melissa. Nicole Marie Brown said, evening all, hi sister. So I figured that was her sister shouting her out, which was just awesome. But again, you're spot on. This was really, really an interesting discussion.
And it will continue, I think we'll continue to embrace, right, the whole higher power. No matter who you talk to, there's always this acknowledgement. You're going to the dance hall, you go down the road, you go, it doesn't matter where.
There's something higher than
this connection that I think we have been taught, and people find that, right?
And we have Mr. Morgan, Garfield Morgan. I believe he's from Canada, saying technology is the now new God. Traditional churches created a vacuum for meaning and a purpose in people's lives. Nature abhors
a vacuum, and therefore technology has filled it. But you know what? But technology has always been around, right? And so I don't know if technology in and of itself is new. What the churches, especially the ones with the dollars, have always embraced
technology. That's true,
right? All that happened, I think, is that the recent pandemic amplified certain things, right? Televangelists have been around long before the pandemic. True. But
I remember them.
The spiritual movements that have led to the demise of many have been around for a long time. Janelle mentioned Kevin Smith, but I remember when that came up, and I was talking to a church friend of mine, and I was saying to her that, listen, you remember Jim Jones?
Yeah.
And that happened long time. So somehow there are some things that there's no newness to it, right? There's no newness to it. I think the equation is still kind of odd for me, in that in the face of all this investment in spirituality and religion and church, we still have these dysfunctional elements and these outcomes that just cannot seem to add up. So the same man will go to church school, or the same girl will go to church school, from basic school all the way up. Somehow the lessons and the messages seem lost. But we still live and we still wake up and give thanks every day, and we're grateful, and we embrace it as part of our culture, because I think it's important to acknowledge that, right? We know if we're on one plane, I go to Jamaica with some Jamaican, so them I go pray. They might have them ackee and selfish, and when the turbulence I go, and even if you laugh a little bit, even if you laugh a little bit, so them I pray, not true.
And when that plane touched down.
Yeah, man, the more clap and go thank you, Jesus. Right? And that is awesome. We have to appreciate it and accept it. So anyway, so it got good reasoning.
Yes.
We appreciate Melissa and Janelle for this. All right. Hold tight, take care, Magan. We do this again.
All right. Oh, yeah, that was good. Oh, yes. Prudence, nicely, Betty. Happy Friday. Who else sent greetings? David, Betty, good evening, everyone. Love it. So let us talk about our patois word of the day, because I see some comments, I see some sentences. It was dopey. Dopey is our patois word of the day, correct? Prudence. Prudence said, dopey no who fi frighten. Prudence, your favor dopey. Prudence, I hope it's not me you're calling dopey, you know. But you're right. You use it proper. Dopey. That dopey know who fi frighten. Nicole Marie Brown also used that in an excellent sentence. And now, so we got it. Dopey is that spiritual being that know who fi frighten who, and we can even go down the road of rolling calf and all these things. Good Jamaican dopey story. We'll discuss that at another time. But yes, dopey, excellent. Now spot the place. Prudence, nicely, Betty. Prudence, Betty. Dolphin Cove. You're right. Yay! Excellent. I love it when people just respond and give me answers and give me sentences. And if you've never been to Dolphin Cove, this is your time to go. It is beautiful. Now, next week, we continue our series of great episodes with discussion on cancer awareness, breast and prostate cancer, with our guests, Dr. Ivan Kongong and Anthony Henry. Next week's discussion is going to be very informative. I invite you to join us. It's going to be fantastic. We are looking for our marketing coordinator. We're looking for an experienced marketing coordinator and a content creator on a volunteer basis to join our Gwaan National team. This is a phenomenal opportunity to hone your communications, creative, and marketing skills, and to work and receive mentorship with a team of professionals located across Canada. Students are welcome. You must have experience working in marketing or social media space, have experience creating marketing, social media campaigns, must be familiar with the Jamaican Caribbean culture. Come and be a part of a vibrant team of people who are all passionate about sharing all aspects of our beautiful Jamaican culture with the world. Do you know someone who is perfect fit for these roles? Please share this information with them and send them a link to our show. We would love to hear from them. Send your resume or ask them to send their resumes via our social media accounts, or simply email us at watagwancnd@gmail.com. Send us your videos saying Watagwan so we can add it to the show. Check out our website. Again, www.watagwan.ca. Send us an email. Contact us on all our social media. We want to hear from you. Another successful. Not up in our fully. This was a good show. My name is Shelley Morgan. Thank you so much for joining us at Watagwan. Wishing you a wonderful weekend. I encourage you to take a moment to give thanks. You have enough things to give thanks for. Give thanks and walk good.